My name is Brewer, co-founder of Crosscut Ventures. The first business I started was actually a pencil business where I was selling pencils to other students in 4th grade. And it was a great business. I would ride my bike to the other side of town, get these colorful pencils with really neat erasers on them, bring them back the next day, and then had quite a large markup. That business was going gangbusters until I tried to expand into 2 other classrooms, and that went for about a day or 2 with other kids in those classrooms selling my pencils, and then the principal came in. And that business was literally shut down in 3 minutes. So I learned a lot of lessons there. The lessons I learned with that first business is you can certainly take shortcuts, and I do think, generally speaking, entrepreneurial businesses have to move quickly and think on their feet and take shortcuts when it makes sense. However, if you don't get the right regulatory approvals, as it was in that example, you will eventually have the door slammed on your operation. So I took that into UCLA eventually and started my first internet business shortly after graduating, which was an e-commerce company selling movies and music and games online. Fundraise for the first company, which was called Intermix Media, was a very slow, painful fundraise. It took almost 18 months to raise about $320,000. In 1996, 1997, when that was, it was a completely different landscape here in Los Angeles and frankly across the country when it comes to starting a business. There wasn't incubators and accelerators, there weren't early stage funds, there weren't seed-friendly venture funds or early-stage entrepreneurial-friendly venture funds, and therefore you had to literally go out and find high-net-worth individuals that were willing to back 2 college kids launching their dream of starting an e-commerce business. Very difficult, but we did it, and we got enough money to get that e-commerce business off the ground. It was a different era. The kind of dot-com gold rush was going on, and fast forward 2 years later, we actually went public in April of 1999. And had a big market cap, and then we were able to really capitalize the business correctly and build a big business from there. I made my shift from being an entrepreneur to hopefully being a venture capitalist around 2007. I had the previous company, Intermix Media, which we sold to News Corp, and then I was running a business called Ad Knowledge. And both of those businesses, we raised a decent amount of outside capital, but almost all from San Francisco venture funds. So between myself and then the 2 other founders, Rick Smith and Brian Garrett, we had a concept which was the LA ecosystem was now big enough and real enough to support a dedicated pool of capital, a dedicated venture fund that was here in Los Angeles, focused on the LA entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that was our vision. We truthfully didn't know it would go necessarily as well as it has. It's taken a long time, but we started the concept in 2007 and eventually launched our first fund in 2008. For me personally, I loved being an entrepreneur. I loved building businesses, and the attraction to pivoting and going more into venture capital is really about scalability. So unlike when you're running a company, you can really only be worried, of course, about that business, and you're dealing with all the fires and the positives, but basically all the day-to-day tasks of that given entity. When you pivot over to this side of the equation, we have invested, if you look at Crosscut now, over 11 years, we've made roughly 90 investments. We have something like 60 active companies. So as an individual, you can hopefully have a much greater impact by spending time with various CEOs for an hour or 2 hours, helping them with operational issues, helping them with strategic decisions, helping them with growth plans, helping them fundraise, helping them hire. But because you're not the one that's actually doing it, your time is much more scalable, and you can have hopefully a more positive impact across a broader number of companies. So my pain points as an entrepreneur when I raised outside capital from very well-known venture funds was typically the value add was the money. That was the main asset that they were bringing to the equation. And I noticed over a period of 12 or 15 years that when the companies had issues or hit a roadblock, that people panicked a little bit in the boardroom, truthfully, and it wasn't the best advertisement for all types of venture capital. So one of our concepts at Crosscut was to be venture capital and loyal and helpful and thoughtful with our CEOs, both in good times and in bad times. And that's really a underlying premise of Crosscut is we don't panic. By the fact that we have, between now 4 partners, we have been doing this something like 57 years combined. We have frankly seen a lot of things, and a lot of things being forks in the road and issues that come up. And I think the number one thing, or one of the number one things that a venture capitalist, seasoned venture capitalist, can bring to an entrepreneur is not panicking and just being the calm voice in the room and saying, that's unfortunate that X, Y, and Z happened. Let's think our way out of this box. Let's think about how we can possibly turn this into a positive, or at least have it not be a negative. Well, challenges scaling Crosscut are more around people. So our funds have grown both in number and in size. We're now investing out of Crosscut 4, which is a $125 million fund. And we have needed to find a way to add support. So we've added an amazing head of platform named Nick Kim that's really helped digitize and platformize our resources and make it really easy and simple for portfolio CEOs to leverage the know-how in Crosscut instead of having to reinvent the wheel every single time. As far as the scalability of individuals' time, the truth is, whether the venture fund is very big or very small, you really are, it does come down to an individual business where you need to spend actual time with your portfolio CEOs. And that part is the same as it was 10 years ago. You just have to do the work and spend the time with the people. We have benefited certainly from the wave that is Los Angeles tech ecosystem. So compared to 10 years ago, there are many, many more incubators and accelerators in Los Angeles. There are many, many more angels, active angels helping start companies. There are many more large entities, successful entities in Los Angeles that are spinning off smaller successful entrepreneurs or smaller successful companies. So Crosscut has certainly benefited from that. In addition to that, we have benefited from making good decisions and backing world-class entrepreneurs that don't take no for an answer, and when they hit a fork in the road or when they have bumped into something that could possibly derail somebody else, they have found a way to eventually make that business successful, and which is in turn has made Crosscut successful. From some of our failures, we have learned that although it's tempting to try to do too many things at the same time, startups especially need to be really, really good at one thing. And if that's a consumer-facing product, you got to make sure that the consumers are loving your product. If it's an enterprise SaaS business, you've got to make sure that you've got 2 or 3 or 4 real customers that are giving you real feedback, and focus on that, not necessarily boiling the ocean, which can be a downfall for startups and confusing because you're getting a lot of input as that startup CEO. You have a lot of ideas, you have a lot of younger energy on the team that typically does want to go solve all kinds of issues, but laser focus is typically what we recommend. Who am I? I am Brett Brewer, 46-year-old. I have the greatest job in the world. Venture capital, being a venture capitalist is the greatest job in the world. Intellectually, it's amazing. The scalability of it is amazing. And most importantly, the individuals that we get to work with that genuinely wake up every day and say, I want to change the world. I want to build the next Google, the next Facebook, the next XYZ. It's an incredible blessing to have the job to get to interact with these types on a very regular basis. So I have 3 basic rules that I like to follow. One is control the controllables. I say that all the time to myself and frankly our CEOs. And it speaks for itself. You can really only control the controllables, so let's focus there. Number 2 is take advantage of your advantages. Every company, whether you're big, you've got some advantages. Whether you're very small, you've got some advantages. Whether you're based in LA, whether you're based in Cleveland, whatever it is, your company has some inherent advantages. You want to make sure and take advantage of those. And number 3 is, it will be okay. I don't know what exactly the fire is, but for the most part, it will be okay. Calmer voices and calmer thinking will prevail. Lots of things bring me joy. Helping entrepreneurs and being truthfully helpful to a company that we work with, and I love helping entrepreneurs that we don't work with. My favorite thing in a meeting is coming out of there, even if Crosscut's not investing, and making an introduction or 2 that changes the path of that company. I very genuinely enjoy it. Another thing I really love is education. So it's a personal philanthropy area of mine. I spend almost all my time in education. And the reason is education to me is the most simple path where you see people change the trajectory of their life. Specifically, I concentrate a lot of times in junior high, where kids are old enough to vote with their feet, so they're old enough they have to choose to be doing a program or whatever it is, but they're still young enough where you can impact them, and they're not on a path that's necessarily going to lead to a bad place. So I love that age, and I love education as the platform to really positively impact kids' lives. Well, we have seen huge shifts in the last 10 years. So if you think about Crosscut specifically, we started out primarily in e-commerce and ad tech because that's what LA was producing. If you fast forward over the 4 funds, today you'll see a much broader risk. We've got an investment in space. We've got a lot of AI machine learning investments. We do a lot in esports. We do a lot of enterprise SaaS. We do much less with physical products. That's changed because I've seen over the years how capital intensive they are and how difficult they are to exit. So the fastest way to see the Crosscut shift is to truthfully look at the different Crosscut portfolios between Crosscut 1 and Crosscut 4, and they are a reflection of the broadening of the LA tech ecosystem and frankly how much better and more mature it's come. Well, what's next for me is keep plugging away at Crosscut. You know, it's an amazing business for a lot of the reasons I just said. It's a slower business. So when you are lucky enough to start a venture fund and to get it through Fund 4, you just keep marching forward because it's such an amazing job. So right now we are very focused on helping our existing 60 portfolio companies either raise capital, find an exit, make a pivot, whatever the case may be, and then eventually down the road we'll worry about future Crosscut funds. Quick advice to an entrepreneur that was thinking about breaking into venture, I would think in terms of what you bring to the equation. So I think just being an entrepreneur and everything that you learn is a big asset to most venture funds. And then I would think through why you want to be a venture capitalist and spend some time in a venture firm and really see the pace of it and see the way it works. And make sure you're getting into it for the right reasons, because it is a slower business and it doesn't quite have the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur.